Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am back with more reviews of the Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist. I haven't done any updates over the last 2 weeks because I've been really busy and really unwell, as you can probably hear a little bit. So yeah, I haven't been filming or doing much, but I have been reading. So I have finished 3 more books from the list. So I've read 6 up to now, which I'm very pleased about. And I continue, with more in the background. But yeah, so I thought I would give you reviews of the 3 books that I finished in the last 2 weeks and how that's kind of going. Now that's affecting sort of my ranking of the books that I've read up to now. And yeah, so let's dive right in. The first one that I finished was A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams. This was an interesting one because I feel like a lot of people were really not that excited by this book. I blame the cover. It's not very exciting. It really gave me the Paper Palace vibes, just like a cover that truly tells you nothing and doesn't really inspire that much. It's just kind of there, which I thought was unfortunate. So I wanted to give that book a chance because not many people were interested in it. And I didn't really know that much. I knew it had to do with a little bit of immigration. So basically we follow a mom and one of her sons. Basically she leaves him in the Caribbean, where they're from, with her sister as she travels with her other son and while pregnant to go and meet her husband in London. So she kind of moves along. She's like, oh, I can't really afford to bring the other child, so leaves him behind for multiple years, I want to say. And then is surprised when, when she finally brings him to London, that he's a bit like distanced from him. So I thought that that's what the most of the book would be about. But turns out this book is very much about connection, but also mental health, mental illness, and disconnect, basically. So it ended up being a really much harder book to read than I expected because there's a lot of trauma. There is sexual assault as well in this, and there are a lot of like mental health, like mental illness breakdown as well. So yeah, it was a tough one. I think it was an interesting read. Like, I'm actually pleased that I read it, and despite not enjoying it because of the really harsh things that happened in this book, I did appreciate this book for what it was, and I did enjoy the sort of plot twists, if you might call them that, the family secrets and the different things that happen in the background. And it was interesting to see like the 2 different perspectives, of the son and the mom as they're trying to reconcile their disconnect and potential connection, and the boy is just so, there's something so lovely about how he constantly wants to kind of capture what he had with his mom back in the Caribbean, even though like that's long gone and stuff like that. So yeah, so a really tough read, but a good one if you're kind of interested in that, and if you kind of know what you're about to get into, because it was a bit of a surprise and I was very disturbed by a lot of things that happens. But still, I still would give this a kind of good rating and a good review. The second book that I finished was Soldier Sailor by Kilroy, and oh my god, I loved it. I love this book. So I was actually painting. Obviously we've been doing lots of renovations, so I spent 2 full days painting, and I ended up on one of those days listening to the entirety of Soldier Sailor in audiobook, because it's actually very short, so also kind of good. I guess I keep saying that, so clearly I'm a very skeptical person, and I saw a lot of hype about this book, and I was like, is it really gonna be that good? People do hype some literary fiction that is sometimes like not my cup of tea at all, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Last year, Demon Copperhead, people loved it. It was not for me at all. So I was very skeptical of Soldier Sailor. But I had the audiobook, so I thought I will give it a try. Basically, the whole book is a bit like a letter written from a mom to her son. The beginning is like, I kept listening, and even though the main character keeps saying, I'm not in postpartum depression, to me, it looks like she is. And I haven't looked at any more things about this book or about what it is, but clearly that's what it is. And everything she discusses is like weighted down with depression and hardship and negative feelings and fear and anxiety and lots of negative things. And like I was listening to it and I was like, wow. Like if you're not sure if you want children, you listen to that and you're just like, I don't think I do want children. Wow, no thanks. I'd rather skip that, you know? But then very subtly throughout the book and the narration of this letter, the main character in the narration becomes a bit more neutral and stable in the sense that it's not just all negative about her baby, but also about her partner. And it becomes, I feel like I could see it happening, but also it was so subtle the way, because it was written so well. And then by the end, it's all very positive and hopeful. And you're like, oh wow, how did we go from that to that in such a short amount of time? And yet it didn't feel clunky. It didn't feel like things were skipped. It stayed with me. Like by the end, I was having it really kind of heavy on my chest. And I was just like, wow, that was like such a roller coaster, but also a very touching narrative about becoming a mother, losing oneself, finding oneself again, and one's partnership, and one's, again, new identity within motherhood, and also seeing your child grow into like a person, you know. So by the end, I was like, whew. And that's a good book when it gives you that, that feeling. And I couldn't listen to anything else after that. I was just, I put some music on because I was like, I needed time to sit with it, and I needed time to have appreciated it. And I was like, oh, no other book is going to be able to kind of come in my mind right now. So I spent the rest of the day painting and listening to music. But yeah, an absolute 5-star for me. And yeah, a huge recommendation for everyone. And finally, the third book that I finished just a few days ago actually was Nightbloom by Adzo Medie. And I actually really enjoyed this book. This book follows two different narrators. So we have Akorfa and Selassie, and they are cousins, they're sort of related, and they are best friends in childhood. And the beginning was really interesting because it really reminded me of My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, in the sense that you have this friendship of two girls in childhood that is a little bit toxic, but it's just, as an adult, when you look at it, one's clearly jealous of the other. There's a disparity in wealth and what they had, but also in keenness for education, because I don't want to call it about intellect, because I don't think the other girl wasn't smart or something, but one of them is more kind of academically minded, and the other one is struggling. So you see like the imbalance through it all, and I feel like that really reminded me of My Brilliant Friend, obviously in a Ghanaian context. And what I really appreciated about this book is the perspectives of it, because you have, I want to say maybe 100 pages. The first 100 pages is in Akorfa's perspective. And things are unfolding and she's like, what's happening? I don't understand why, when the friendship starts to break down, she's like, I don't understand why this is happening. And she really questions herself, but she sort of lets it go as well, because she's focusing obviously on her own career and education and life and blah, blah. And then we get to Selassie's part. And then we get a lot more of her perspective, interestingly enough. But we fall into her life and we see her side of the story. And I found that fascinating, because I think it's a reminder that there are two sides, or many sides, to every story. And what was really even more kind of interesting is that there are things that happen in both of their perspective that doesn't happen in the other. So in Akorfa's perspective, she gets into like the best private school, and Selassie doesn't have the grades to get in. So it turns out that her father pulls strings to get her into that good school. And she says, why did he only get me in this and not in science, blah, blah, blah. And she complained and she wasn't even grateful. And then we go into Selassie's part and she's just like, oh, I was so grateful that they pull strings. And she doesn't complain about the fact that she got put in a different program. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I don't know if it was on purpose, but it feels to me like it was. And it's like how we remember things that have happened to us, how we remember interactions we've had, but from our own perspective. Obviously, we're all very much in our own perspective. So I thought that it was a brilliant book for highlighting that. And the way that we interact with others is completely tainted by our own perspective of ourselves, and also, I guess, perspective of them. We don't know their inner life. We never do. And it's clearly, especially in childhood, something that they take for granted. So yeah, I absolutely adored that. And then we get a little portion at the end where they sort of come together and not quite resolve, because I don't think it's resolvable, but they come together and clearly understand a little bit more from each other. Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. Both characters have a lot of entitlement issues, and they have their own things. There is assault in both of the storylines, just so you're aware, because we continue in there's an assault in every single book that I've read up to now or something. Actually, Claire Kilroy's book, I don't think had an assault, and it was a 5-star for me. Is there coincidence? I don't know. But anyway, there is assault in both of these storylines of both girls, which is really tough to read about, but which I think is essential as part of this story in a sense. I think this book is traumatic to read in many ways, but also just so interesting. I think just because of all the perspective thing I've been talking about was just fascinating, because I've never really seen it as much happen, because you get unreliable narrators and stuff like that. But this, to me, I didn't feel like they weren't reliable narrators. It's just that their own narrations were like completely tainted by how they clearly remembered events in their lives and have maybe had their views tainted by, so Akorfa relies heavily on her mother, and her mother's vision taints her vision, and Selassie is struggling to make connections sometimes, and at the end she's like, oh, I wish she apologized, and I'm like, well, literally if I go back 4 pages, she does. Did you already forget that? And it's interesting because sometimes you get these weak quips, like her brother actually says, that's when he realizes that for her, nothing will ever be enough to make up for what happened to her, because it was so bad and so like traumatic, especially in formative years. So yeah, a really, really good read. I was actually very pleased, and it reads really quickly as well. Yeah, so an excellent book that I would recommend. And I had a friend, I posted on Instagram, and I have a friend who said that she read Pieces of Medie's first book, his only wife, and she said that was really, really good, and that wasn't as dramatic, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance as well then, because I enjoyed this, but it was a bit hard to read. But yeah, so three good books actually. I'm quite pleased. I feel like the first 3 books I read were like middling, and then these 3 books have been good, which is interesting because I feel like now my list of the 6 that I've read, so obviously I'm still missing 10, but of the 6 that I've read, obviously top is Claire Kilroy's Soldier Sailor. Like 100%, I wonder if anything's gonna top it, because it was just so good. So it's top of my list right now. It's the winner. Nothing to discuss here. In second, I think I have to say Nightbloom is close second for me. It was really, really good. And then A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams. And again, that's showing that those 3 books I've been discussing today are the 3 books that I preferred. Because then the 3 books I discussed in my last video are at the bottom here, and the more I sit with them, the more I'm like, oh, I guess it doesn't really matter, like, the ranking for, like, the bottom books, but I think The Maiden comes in 4th, and The Wren comes in 5th, and River East, River West comes in 6th. And that's surprising, because I think River East, River West was my top book when I reviewed it in my last video. But the more I'm sitting with it, the more I'm finding it not very memorable, and I just didn't really enjoy anything about it. Well, I think I enjoyed some bits of The Wren and also The Maiden. So that's why kind of the list keeps shifting the more I'm reading. But yeah, enjoying the experience. I'm picking up 3 more books from the library today when I'm popping by, so I'll continue and I'll bring more updates soon of hopefully 3 more books. I'm almost finished this Blue Beautiful World. I have that on audio and it's weird, but I will give you more thoughts soon. So as always, thank you so much for watching and see you back. Bye!